Two girls rode their scooters to the store for snacks, but their outing took a dark turn with shocking details. Over the years, the story had many unexpected twists, some almost unbelievable, and the ending was quite surprising. Michaela Garecht was born on January 24, 1979, in Oakland, California. She was the long-awaited first child her parents had hoped for after trying for 5 years. Later, Michaela's parents had 2 more children, and they all moved to the quieter town of Haywood, a peaceful place for their growing family. Michaela was a cheerful child who loved playing with her siblings and spending time with her best friend Katrina. Living across from each other, the girls were constant companions, always visiting and playing near their homes. On November 19, 1988, Michaela and Katrina, both 9 years old, were happily running between their houses, trying on outfits for a school show. It was the start of Thanksgiving break, so that the girls were excited. Around 10 a.m., Katrina's dad gave her $1 to buy some candy. The girls quickly went to Michaela's house to ask her mom if they could go to the nearby store, which was less than a mile away. Michaela's mom hesitated because they were only 9 and had never gone to the store alone. They had always gone with family or older friends. After some convincing, Michaela's mom agreed, but only if they bought candy and came straight home. She was especially worried about Michaela's safety, since she was their first child, born after many years of trying. That day, Michaela's mom felt confident that nothing bad would happen. The store was close by, and the girls planned to ride their scooters there. Michaela ran back to Katrina's house. They needed 2 identical scooters, so Katrina took hers and borrowed another one from her brother. They rode to the store, left their scooters outside, and went in to buy candy. When they came out, they got distracted talking and forgot about their scooters. They started walking home, but quickly remembered and went back to where they had left them. That's when they saw that Michaela's scooter was gone. Thinking someone might have moved it, the girls decided to check around the store from different sides to find it. Michaela walked through the parking lot and soon saw her scooter next to a car parked a few yards from the store. She went toward it, but suddenly Katrina heard a terrifying scream. She ran back and saw a man grabbing Michaela and forcing her into the car right next to her scooter. The man quickly got back into the driver's seat and sped away. Shocked, Katrina ran into the store and told the cashier what had happened. The cashier immediately called the police, who arrived at the scene within minutes. The store employee also called Michaela's father, who he knew, and informed him of the situation. Michaela's father, along with Katrina's father, rushed to the store where investigators were already present. He told his wife to stay home by the phone in case the police called. The detectives immediately faced several challenges. There were no security cameras near the store, and the only person who saw the kidnapping was Katrina, who was so shocked she could barely talk. Her dad took her home. The store cashier gave the first clue. She said a strange man had been hanging around the store just before the kidnapping. He parked his car, got out, but never went into the store. Instead, he walked along the building, looking through the windows, and seemed to be watching the girls. The cashier thought he might be planning to rob the store. She described him as a white man, about 30 years old, with a noticeable mustache. He was driving an old maroon sedan, but she couldn't identify the make or the license plate number. After getting a description of the kidnapper, the police made a sketch and shared it with the media. News of the abduction spread quickly through the city and beyond, shocking people that such a bold crime could happen in a busy area. The police also shared the sketch and description of the suspect's car with hundreds of patrol officers across the county. Officers started stopping any cars that matched the description, hoping to find the girl alive. The detectives then sent Michaela's scooter to forensic experts for examination. They suspected the kidnapper saw the girls arrive at the store and deliberately moved one of the scooters closer to his car to facilitate the abduction. They hoped his fingerprints might be on the scooter. They did find a partial fingerprint that didn't match anyone in Katrina's family or Michaela, but there was a problem. The partial print made it difficult to search in the database. At the time, technology wasn't advanced enough for such tasks, so the police had to compare it directly with potential suspects' prints. By the evening of the abduction, the FBI had joined the investigation due to a rise in child disappearances, not only in Haywood, but also in nearby cities. They suspected a possible link between Michaela's case and these other disappearances. Despite the FBI's involvement and widespread media attention, there was little progress in finding the missing girl. Michaela's parents were devastated. Her mother blamed herself and remembered a troubling incident just a week before the abduction. One morning, Michaela woke unusually early, sat at the kitchen table, and said she was writing a poem. This was unusual because she wasn't known for waking up so early. She mentioned hearing a noise in the attic and was inspired to write about people being taken there, not harmed. At the time, her mother found it strange for a 9-year-old to have such ideas. But after the abduction, it took on an eerie and almost prophetic meaning. She couldn't help but wonder if Michaela had somehow foreseen her own fate. Over the next 2 days after the abduction, the police worked tirelessly to search for the suspect and the missing girl. Despite their best efforts, they encountered many obstacles and were no closer to finding her. As a result, they decided to talk to Katrina again, hoping she might remember more details now that some time had passed. However, this led to a surprising development. Katrina's description of the kidnapper's appearance differed significantly from the one given by the cashier who witnessed the abduction. After the abduction, Katrina described the man as around 20 years old, with long, messy, light-colored hair down to his shoulders, a face full of pimples, and striking blue eyes that reminded her of a fox. She also remembered his car, a beige sedan that was boxy and had several dents. This information surprised the police because the store cashier had given a different description. The cashier had been suspicious of a man acting strangely near the store, but Katrina, who had seen the abduction happen, described a completely different man and car. This created a big problem for investigators because they had shared an inaccurate sketch of the suspect with the media and patrol officers, leading everyone to look for the wrong person. In the crucial first 48 hours after the abduction, considered the most vital for swift action, the police swiftly created a new composite sketch based on Katrina's description and circulated it widely. They also took the proactive step of interviewing all men in the vicinity with previous convictions for sexual offenses. Volunteers joined in, canvassing door to door to speak with residents in hopes of identifying the abductor or gathering any useful leads. Thousands of flyers featuring the girl's photo and details of the incident were distributed, with an astonishing 42,000 handed out in just the initial days. After a few days, they received their first promising lead. 3 individuals reached out, recounting a hiking trip in a sprawling national park near their city. While exploring, these seasoned hikers discovered footprints on the ground, a set belonging to an adult and another to a child. They chose to follow these tracks, eventually finding a blanket and discarded fast food wrappers deep in the forest. The police began considering the possibility that these traces could be linked to Maya and her abductor. The FBI's psychological profile indicated that the abductor would probably take the victim to a location far from civilization. The national park's vastness and proximity to the city fit this theory perfectly. Detectives mobilized extensive resources to search the park thoroughly. Ground teams combed through the area, and helicopters equipped with thermal imaging surveyed from above. Despite these efforts, they found no sign of the girl or any clues. Subsequently, the police extended their search to other parks, mountains, and remote areas. But each effort ended without success. During the first month of the investigation, the case garnered widespread media attention across the country, resulting in an overwhelming influx of tips, approximately 4,000 in total. Investigators faced significant challenges in thoroughly investigating each lead. The case became a topic of intense discussion among residents of neighboring San Francisco and nearby cities. Prominent individuals also joined efforts, appealing to the public to provide any relevant information to the police. In response to the urgency of the situation, a substantial reward of $70,000 was offered, and Michaela's photograph was featured on millions of milk boxes throughout the state, aiming to reach as many people as possible. Despite extensive community involvement and a flood of leads, detectives struggled to make any headway. By the end of December, a month and a half into the search, police admitted that despite checking thousands of leads, they had made no significant progress. For months afterward, the investigation remained stagnant, Police diligently followed up on numerous tips, and Michaela's mother conducted her own investigation, studying similar cases and attempting to identify her daughter's abductor. Despite the lack of breakthroughs, they held on to hope that Michaela was still alive and that the perpetrator was keeping her somewhere in captivity. In 1991, police started looking into a 43-year-old man named Timothy Binder. The more they investigated his past, the weirder it seemed. Before Michaela's disappearance, Binder had already caught the attention of the police because of his strange actions. He'd been sending presents, letters, and cash to many young girls. Some of these letters had parts of the Bible underlined, like, "I have chosen you and be with me." Worried parents of some of the girls called the police on him, which led to Binder being questioned. He said he was just trying to make friends with the girls because he thought they were alone. But the investigation uncovered a dark past. In 1985, Binder lost his job at Child Protective Services in Colorado because he was caught collecting personal details about young girls. Then, he started sending them presents, money, and letters. When the police searched his van, they found a lot of pictures of kids and Bible verses stuck all over the inside. On top of that, Binder had been arrested before for trying to get 2 girls into his van, but no charges were pressed. Plus, Binder would often visit the graves of young girls in cemeteries and spend an oddly long time there. But things got even creepier. Just 6 months before Michaela vanished, a 7-year-old girl named Amber disappeared from the same area. Soon after that, Binder contacted Amber's mum, offering to help and visiting her house a lot. He even wrote a weird letter to the police, saying the next missing girl would be 9 years old. A few months later, Michaela, who was also 9, was kidnapped. After she disappeared, Binder kept calling Michaela's mum, visiting her house, and again offering to help. But this creepy pattern continued. In early December of 1988, Binder sent a Christmas card to an FBI agent who studies criminal minds, someone he had talked to before. The picture on the card showed a girl holding up 4 fingers. Not long after that, a 4-year-old girl vanished from the same town. Even though these details were strange and suspicious, they weren't enough real proof. So, the police got a warrant to search Binder's house where he lived with his wife. But unfortunately, they didn't find anything solid that connected him to any of the missing girls. When the news reported on Binder's strange actions, people started to think he might be a murderer who attacks people one after another. This led to people bothering and attacking him and his family. Binder even ended up suing the city because they spread wrong information, and he won the case. The police kept looking into him for months, but in the end, they couldn't find any real proof that connected him to the missing girls. Some detectives even thought he wasn't a danger to kids, and his odd behavior might have nothing to do with these cases. So the police started looking at other possible suspects. For 4 whole years after Michaela vanished, there weren't any new clues. Then, in December 1992, a prisoner in Indiana who was in jail for robbery contacted the police. He said he knew who took Michaela and even claimed to help hide her body in the same park where they found some evidence. At first, the police weren't interested, but then the prisoner wrote a letter to a famous newspaper in San Francisco, and everyone found out. The police got a lot of criticism for not listening, so because of the pressure, they decided to talk to the prisoner. He promised to not only show them where Michaela was buried, but also take them straight to the killer. They brought him to California, and he went searching with the police. The prisoner said the body was buried in a field of flowers called Gladiolus, and the police searched that area all day. After 8 hours, the prisoner finally admitted he lied about the whole thing. He said he just wanted to help Michaela's family feel better and move on. But Michaela's family and the police were very angry about his fake story. The prisoner got an extra 6.5 years in jail, almost twice his original sentence. On top of that, he had to pay Michaela's family $6,000. Then, in August 2000, there was a new lead in the case. Police arrested a man named Curtis Anderson for killing a 7-year-old girl the year before. He admitted to the crime and went to prison, but detectives thought he might be responsible for other similar crimes too. For 7 years, they couldn't find any real proof until Curtis himself contacted the FBI. He was very sick and wanted to confess to other crimes before he died. In his confession, Curtis admitted to killing 13 other girls and women, including the 7-year-old girl Amber, who vanished 6 months before Michaela. He gave details that made the police think he might be responsible, but it was still hard to prove he did it because they couldn't find any bodies or other evidence. When they asked him about Michaela, Curtis said he didn't do it, even though his car looked similar to what Michaela's mum described. The FBI planned to ask him more questions, but Curtis died in 2012. The investigation took another turn when a prisoner contacted the police. He said his cellmate, Lauren Herzog, looked exactly like the drawing of the suspect in Michaela's case. The police were interested because Lauren and his partner had already been caught for killings they did together. They were suspected of killing 19 people, but investigators weren't able to prove all of those crimes. Sadly, just a month before the cellmate spoke up, Lauren had committed suicide in prison. The police still looked into the possibility that Lauren was involved. A picture of Lauren when he was younger did look similar to the suspect drawing, but they needed more proof. So, they decided to dig up a well where Lauren and his partner used to dump the bodies of their victims. They found tons of tiny bone pieces, which doctors then examined closely. After a long investigation, they figured out the bones belonged to 5 different girls, but none of them were Michaela. The police checked several wells, but they couldn't find anything to connect Lauren to Michaela's case. The case took a big turn in 2018. A man named David Mitch was arrested for killing 2 women in 1986 near the town where Michaela disappeared. This was all thanks to modern science. Back then, they couldn't analyze tiny evidence they found under the victim's nails, but with new technology, they were able to link David to the crimes. David was already in jail for killing his girlfriend in 1989. The police suspected he might also be involved in Michaela's case, and they found some interesting clues. David was in the same area when Michaela vanished. He also looked like the description Katrina gave, and his car was similar. Since the police already had David's fingerprints on file, they took another look at the partial fingerprint found on Michaela's scooter. Thanks to modern science, they hit the jackpot. The fingerprint on the scooter matched David's perfectly. In 2020, the police charged David with Michaela's murder. Even though nobody believed Michaela was still alive, David said he wasn't guilty. The trial finally began in early 2023. There were some meetings beforehand to decide if there was enough evidence, and the judge said yes, the trial could go ahead. David's lawyer argued that the fingerprint on the scooter didn't necessarily mean David kidnapped Michaela. It seemed like a weak argument though, since whoever took Michaela clearly left the scooter next to their car on purpose, probably to lure her close. The defense also tried to argue that David shouldn't be charged with murder because Michaela's body wasn't found. But that reason wasn't good enough anymore. In many cases these days, people are found guilty of murder even if the body isn't found, as long as there's a lot of other evidence. On top of that, David had a bad history of violence. When he was 16, he broke into a house and threatened a woman with a knife. He only served a year in prison and got released early. But he didn't learn his lesson and tried to attack another woman soon after. That landed him back in prison for 2 more years. Then, in May 1988, just 7 months before Michaela vanished, David got arrested for robbing a store. Again, he only served part of his sentence and was released a month before Michaela disappeared. Michaela's father came from another state to be at the press conference, where they announced they arrested the person who took his daughter. Sadly, Michaela's mom, who always held on to hope that Michaela was alive, couldn't be there. She was fighting cancer, and shortly after the news of the arrest, she passed away. But before she died, she thanked the investigators for finding the truth. The police are still searching for Michaela's body and are offering $10,000 to anyone with helpful information. David Mitch's trial is coming up soon. They will be looking at 3 cases, Michaela's and the 2 murders where his DNA was found under the victim's fingernails. At first, the prosecutors wanted to seek the death penalty, but the person in charge changed and the new one decided against it. Even if David is found guilty of killing all 3 women, he won't be sentenced to life in prison, just many years behind bars. This decision made the victims' families very angry, and it was all over the news. The only person who agreed with this change was David's lawyer, but David is already 62 years old, so it's unlikely he'll even live long enough to serve the whole sentence, even if it's shorter. It's important to remember that the prison system let him out of jail early multiple times, even though he kept committing crimes. If they hadn't released him just a month before Michaela disappeared, she might still be alive. All right, everyone, that's all for today. If this case piqued your interest, leave a comment below and let's discuss it. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more true crime content. Your support keeps the channel going, so thanks a bunch.